Hello to our viewers around the world, and we thank you for joining us. This is a special program produced by Oromia Media Network, OMN, and broadcasted to East Africa and around the world through satellite feed and social media. I, Daraj Jaha, as your host, saying hello to you and joined by our technician, Adil Osman. Today, in this special program, I have a guest for you, an Oromo friend, Dr. Trevor Truman. Dr. Trevor Truman, as probably many of you know, he's a physician, retired family medical practitioner who lived among the Oromo people in refugee situations in Sudan and also Western Oromia for an extended period of time between 1986 to 1992. He has been training healthcare workers in West Oromia and Wallega promised by then. And then after the Derg regime was collapsed in 1991 and the TPLF regime began, he started being alarmed and concerned about the human rights violation that the Oromos were experiencing. So with his friends and many Oromo colleagues with him, they found the Oromo Support Group, Oromia Support Group, OSG in 1994. And Dr. Truman was leading the OSG from London, from United Kingdom, where he lives right now, Melbourne, United Kingdom. So without further ado, Dr. Truman, welcome to OMN.
By Galatome.
By the way, Dr. Truman were adopted or Mogasa as an Oromo. And his name is Galato. I think he was the Mogasa ceremony was done in Melbourne, Australia, and his name is Galato, as I said, and also in his Gada hierarchy, he is a Robale. Isn't that true, Doctor?
Sirida.
All right. Welcome, Doctor. So more about OSCE and the current human rights violation report that came out by OSCE is what we are going to be talking about today. But before that, I know OSCE did a lot of work since 1994, but there are a lot of current new generation that probably wanted to know about the OSCE. So, Doctor, who is Oromia Support Group? When was established? What are the highlights of its accomplishments so far? And also, of course, we talk about this interview is going to the report you guys are out. So, before we dive into that, if you can just go briefly to introduce OSCE to our viewers.
It was established in 1994 at the request of Oromo in London, friends of mine, Mohammed Katessa and Demesi Tulu. They said that nobody is listening to Oromo voices when they complain of human rights abuses going on, committed by the EPRDF. And since then, we've grown to have supporters not only in the UK, but across Europe, in the USA, Canada, Australia, and of course now in Ethiopia. And we naively thought, or I naively thought, back in the early days, that if the regimes the governments which supported the TPLF-led regime, if they knew of the human rights abuses going on, then they wouldn't support the regime like they did. And as you know, all regimes, since Haile Selassie, including him, depended on foreign support. And since then, we've written 54 reports on human rights violations in Ethiopia. We concentrated especially on the rights of refugees in reports written between 2010 and 2013. But it became increasingly difficult to get information out of Ethiopia, and also we became redundant in 2014 with the rise of the Oromia Media Network and the success of the Kare movements. However, with the information we provided, no excuse for any government in Europe, including the UK, any government the US, Australia, none can say that they're ignorant of human rights abuses in Ethiopia. But it now feels like 1992 again, and in some ways it's worse. And I noticed in a biography that when you asked for a biography for this program, I wrote a year or so ago that Dr. Truman has now retired from campaigning work and works in nature conservation. I wish that were true. You could say that I was dragged out of retirement by Abiy Ahmed. So he owes me a favor there. You asked about the report and where we get our information from, I believe.
I'm actually, yes, I want you to introduce the accomplishments of OSG, but and my follow-up questions, Doctor, in a country like Ethiopia, communication is deliberately disrupted in hot areas, especially, for example, what's going on now in Western Oromia and South, where the internet connections and all communication aspects are banned. So in this kind of environment, your organization had to utilize some kind of methods to get citizens or agencies to report to you and get eyewitness accounts for all the atrocities that are going, that comes to your report. So can you talk about that, like safely, how you could accomplish that to get an objective and verifiable reports from the place where communication is hard to come by?
Yes, it's. I must say we've relied heavily on a few individuals, some of whom have paid with their freedom or even with their lives since the 1990s in terms of getting information out of Ethiopia. There's one individual in particular in Norway who has been sending me information from 1994, initially from Ethiopia, but now from contacts he has maintained in Ethiopia, across Wolaga, across Oromia, but especially in Wolaga. I've kept his identity secret, but maintained the organizations he used to work for as his nom de plume as Godado, as you know, that means agony in Afan Oromo. He and an individual in Melbourne, Australia, and also the Human Rights League from the Horn of Africa, based in Toronto. Between them, they're the source of all of my information, I would say. And they gather information, as you know, from individual contacts they've maintained in Ethiopia, but they have to be very careful.
Excellent. So it is a human harness on the ground that already built by OSCG and friends that providing this verifiable information. Okay. So
yes,
among these reports that
experienced reporters.
Yes,
been used to analyzing reports and checking them for authenticity and accuracy. Yeah. And quite often, my different sources have provided the same information using slightly altered spellings in the names and whatnot, but it's all verifiable and often verifiable by more than one source, the information I've given.
Excellent. That's hard work to do in a place where communication is as we talked about.
As I say,
excellent. Yeah. So let's head to my next question, which is the heart of this interview, based on your current report 54. It's labeled or titled "The Empire Strike Back: Catastrophic Consequences." It says. So I found this report indexed as a report 54. That means there are other 53 reports that already OSCG published since its inception. So to be very comprehensive, at least in terms of footprint coverage, where it touches many of Ethiopia's region throughout across the ethnic groups that live in Ethiopia. So it's got a comprehensive coverage. And also the report says Ethiopia has voluntarily suspended opposition in Walaita, Sidama, Kamant, Benishangul, Gumuz, and all other areas, including Oromia. So that shows the coverage that and the length that your report goes to. And also it details the type of abuses, such as killing, detention, rape, arbitrary arrest, beating, detain, and disappearance of parents of the OLA, as you put it there, and also house burning. All this happening throughout Ethiopia, in Finfinne, in Central Oromia, in Amhara region, in Eastern Oromia, Western Oromia, Benishangul Gumuz, Southern Oromia, throughout the country, pretty much this atrocity is going on. So can you talk about, because this is the heart of the report that you want to talk about, the generalized figure and the level of brutality that's summed up in this report, sir?
Yes, thank you. I'm very keen that people should know just how murderous this current regime is. We reported about 5,000 killings from the previous regime over the 27 years that it ruled. And yet we've reported nearly 1,400 killings by this regime in 2 years alone. And remember, this is only a fraction of those killed. We're still receiving reports from 2019 even. So, but up to this report, we've now recorded 1,342 civilian killings by Abiy Ahmed's regime. 505 in 2019, an increase already, 837 last year, 2020. We've received reports especially from Western Oromia, especially Kelem in southwest Wolaga. In Western Oromia, 442 have been killed. And as I say, this is only a fraction. This is the ones we hear about. 442 have been killed, and 320 of those, so 3/4 of those, in 2020, within the last year. All across Oromia, there are many blind spots, but we know that this sort of abuse is happening everywhere in Oromia region. The judiciary is being emasculated, it's being neutered by the current regime. Judges are being imprisoned if they don't kowtow to the regime. And one very sinister event is that, reminiscent of the Red Terror, is prisoners, people who are taken out of custody in police stations by soldiers and shot dead. This hasn't happened since the Red Terror, especially at this sort of level. Yeah, it's horrific what's happening now. As I say, 1,342. It's and these are the ones we've heard about. It breaks my heart writing these reports. Every time I do it, it depresses me no end. But it's the extent of these abuses that's made me vocal again. It's made me so angry. I've got to speak out about it.
Very well, yeah. I mean, the brutality is unmatched, unparalleled. All successive regimes done it to stay on power. That's what they do. But the level and the kind of brutality that we see recently is unparalleled. And of course, as you acknowledged, the number you're getting in your report is a fraction of what actually happened on the ground. But you just have to do the verifiable work to display your numbers there. So,
as you say, it is more primitive. It's more brutal. And yes. Genital mutilation, beheadings, just cutting people's heads off and displaying them in public. This is disgusting medieval behaviour. And the regime before was bad enough, but this really makes me cross, as you can see, I'm sorry.
That's correct. So, in your opinion, Doctor, what is, I don't know if this is a good question or not, but what is the government set out to accomplish by unleashing such brutality on its own people? What is the accomplishment to do such horrific stuff that they do to own people. And also, you might want to answer this with it. So OSCE is doing for a long time all this human rights abuse reporters, but have you tried to reach out to like international communities such as donors, international rights groups, and extra to share this? And have you gotten any feedback from those?
Yes, we've had good relationships with Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. We've exchanged information with both of these organizations and had trusted relationships with them. We have sent information to UNHCR because refugee status depends on human rights abuses in the countries of origin. So we've tried to keep UNHCR informed, and we've tried to keep our governments informed. As I said earlier, there is no excuse for any Western government claiming to be ignorant about human rights abuses ongoing in Ethiopia. We're up against huge bias in the media because the people who are committing the abuses, the urban elites who back the current Prime Minister, they are the ones with the best connections in the media. So we see examples of this, for instance, in Shashamane and Dira and Batu in Eastern Shoa after the assassination of Hachalu Hundessa. Many Oromo took to the streets and many were brutally killed. But the media immediately came out that Oromo youths were killing Amharas and in these areas, whereas it's Oromo who bore the brunt of the abuses. But it's the urban elite neo-Neftenia group, if you like, who is so well connected with the media that it's even the BBC and the Guardian, even Amnesty International were tending towards blaming Oromo youngsters for doing these abuses. You're right, it's ancient, primitive, zero-sum politics that's driving the activities of the current regime. For this to be taking place, they need to have impunity from human rights abuses. It's an ancient medieval way of doing things, and it's quite antithetic. It's opposing the Oromo way, the open democratic way, the way of compromise and consensus. But this zero-sum politics, winner takes all, is an ancient, outdated way of doing things. But yet we have the Amharas and the Tigrayans fighting over Oromo resources as though they belong to them and trying to kill each other in the process. It's basically underpinned, I think, by racism. There's a feeling of superiority amongst the groups in the old Abyssinia, the northern Ethiopia, that the people in the south just don't matter. They're not of the same worth as Amharas and Tigrays and Eritreans. It seems to me that it's similar to how I was brought up in England in the 1950s. Our attitude to the colonies was one of paternalistic superiority, moral superiority, physical superiority, mental superiority, privilege, access to resources. And it's very similar to what we see the attitude of these Amhara urban elites now having against the Oromo.
Yeah, I want to bring you back to this double standard kind of PR abuse that we're up against. Ethiopian human rights abuse report by the country's Human Rights Commission, which is amplified by the regime's friendly media from Washington, D.C., all the way down to Addis, Finfinne. There are a lot of troubling accusations. We can see, we can grab a couple of them. One, there are deliberate, selective, and sometimes made-up human rights violation reports to fit like the general anti-federalism propaganda to attack the Oromos or the Gumus, the Sidamas, and then wrap this up, and blame it, or the catalyst is the federal system, ethnic federal system creates this. So just to label it to that, or to wrongly identify it with that, they amplify all these lies. And the second, the government itself uses different tactics to create wedges between people, between Amharas and Oromos, Oromos and Tigres, within Oromo, between clans or gosas, between Oromos, within religion, try to pit one to another, and then with that, he can show up as, the government can show up as a, playing a role of arbitration or law enforcement to the atrocity and stuff that the government itself created to become a hero out of it, which is a very dangerous stuff. So you also touched about this one. What evidence you report, this report or previously, find to corroborate this kind of accusation, our disadvantage from PR and also from what the government is doing? Can you talk about that, Doctor, please?
Yes. Opponents of the present unitary policy of the Prosperity Party, people who want a degree of regional autonomy, people who want to support the present semi-successful federal structure of Ethiopia, have been put down and killed in Sidama, in Walaita, in Benishangul Gumuz, in Tigray, as we're seeing now, with tens, possibly hundreds of thousands being killed, as well as in Oromia. And the irony is that trying to force people to belong to a unitary state, trying to force people to be subject against their will, and then when people campaign for a degree of federal autonomy, they are suppressed even further, and then you blame them for disturbing the peace. You kill the population and detain the population, and then you blame them for disturbing your peace. This is not logical.
That is true. That's an unfortunate truth. So with that, related reports in the country's human rights violation is the sole fundamental important weapon to successive regimes in that country. Meaning to stay on power, they must violate rights. They must the people of that country should not have a choice, should not elect their representatives, should not be gathered, the press should not be free, so they can be ruling it with impunity. Absolutely. So with that, there is I know you're familiar with all right agencies worldwide, how they they come together, collect their data, and educate people or notify the international community. In particular in Ethiopia, the Ethiopian Human Rights Commissions, which is currently led by Daniel Bakala, had to report to or accountable to the House of People's Representatives in the country. The House of People of Representatives were never been elected by any free and fair election. They are always members of a single ruling party. It doesn't matter, it's the Derg's Socialist Party or the TPLF, or even before that or after. They have to belong to a one and single party. This House of Representatives are the higher governing body of the Ethiopian Human Rights Commissions. So obviously, everything is dictated to this commission. So how the international community should be relied on any information at all by the commission that is set up by the government and became the spoke mouth of the government itself. Can you please talk about that a little bit?
Yes. I used to have a lot of faith in Daniel Bekele when he worked for Human Rights Watch. But I have been disappointed with some of the reporting from the Ethiopian Human Rights Council and some of the excuses given for the heavy-handed tactics in Oromia, and blaming it partly on the Oromo people and the instability there. However, you have to realize that he's not only answerable to the House of Representatives, he is surrounded by urban elites who believe that Oromo are somebody to be feared. They have this misconception that Oromo are genetically violent and against them, that we belong to the same zero-sum political game, and we don't. That's not been the Oromo way of doing things for thousands of years, as you well know. Democracy didn't begin in Europe or America. It began with the Oromo, with the Cushitic peoples of the northeast of Africa. And for them to be expected to kowtow to a zero-sum system is anathema. And that I really support the Kero Kare movement and how brave they were in bringing the regime and of the TPLF to end as they did, and allowing a change in 2018 which led to the freedoms that were widely supported then. But it's very apparent that I'm afraid the Prime Minister is a man with a messianic complex who believes he deserves to rule over a united Ethiopia and to rule by force. You cannot force a political system on people and force on them the rulers within that political system without getting their support. You cannot force people to do that forever. And I'm afraid Ngasa Kumsu was right. The Oromo are a big cooking pot, but by the time you've got them boiling, then I'm afraid your dish is cooked. And the change is going to occur in Ethiopia. Our job, I think, is to make that change less bloody than it may be. If things go the way Abiy Ahmed is trying to make them, then we'll end up with a horrific bloodbath in the north of Africa, which will be horrible. But it's so avoidable. All we need to do is find reasonable voices amongst those in the ruling party with whom we can discuss and delineate a transitional setup from which to write another constitution if necessary. Although I don't see what's very wrong with the 1995 one, which incidentally guarantees the right to self-determination, as is recommended in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. One of the 30 articles is about self-determination.
Yeah, Dr. Trevor, as you recall and saw about a week ago, January 6th, was on world display how a group of people drove throughout the United States to come to the Capitol and create all that problem that tested America's democracy. But the fact that there was strong institutions like the judiciary itself and the courts, the lawmakers, the Congress, the law enforcement, even the president's cabinet, believing in that institution, they were able to save the country from really brink of disaster. Yes. So when we take that to Ethiopia, throughout all the regimes of Ethiopia, the only thing that the regimes there do is not allowed to any growth of institutions that come to support democracy. This is in terms of, as I said, in terms of like, the legislature or the court itself in Ethiopia, or the politicians and all the parties and all that. But outside of that, with a name, the Human Rights Commission, with a name, an election board. These are the closest fundamental things that are supposed to be free, even when the country is not free. But we often, most often lose confidence with this kind of agencies. For example, the election commission or agency that is led by Birtukan Mideksa. Birtukan Mideksa once, was said to be in the ranks of Mandela when she was in prison during the 2005 election, came back to be the instrument to the tyranny that we see now. And also, as you said, Dr. Daniel Bakkala had a good reputation. He himself was a taught prisoner who came to lead this Human Rights Commission. But we see still a problem from that institution being linked and commanded by this party that Abiy Ahmed is leading. To detail, maybe why didn't we see reports about 400 Gumus families tortured in the huts for days? Like college students from Oromia were singled out and lynched in other regions just because they're Oromos. The general who died a couple of years ago, the General Asamino, took a special force and campaign on Kamise Wallo to kill a lot of children and women. Oromos were, called out from prison and shot dead just to be thrown to hyenas. Families of activists, you talked about OLS families being, abused, but throughout Oromia, families of activists and people who are already in prison, their families are being abused. Prisoners who are, set free by judges, only the police to say no and put them in jail. So all this kind of things that are documented and sitting there for the country's human rights groups, why is it not that they're steadfast and detached, especially these individuals, to not report these details, Dr. Truman?
Well, they are reporting that there are credible accounts of abuses in the Oromia region, including extrajudicial killings. But they don't repeat the numbers or the individual cases that we do. I don't think we should be too heavy in our criticism of the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, because in the future they will be cooperating with us and we will be cooperating with them, I hope. The ongoing abuses, though, are indeed frightening. Once you threaten the independence of the judiciary, then you threaten the whole fabric of civil society. And it is the strength of civil society that provides institutions that prevent the riots in Washington getting out of hand. And really, it's this fabric that is being undermined by the current regime. And they had poor ground to work on. Even before this regime came to power, I don't think there was a family in Oromia that didn't know somebody who'd been detained or tortured or raped. And now this sort of damage to the whole society, it holds people back for generations. And it's such a shame to see resources and lives wasted in such a neglectful way. And the resources of Oromia were used to build up Tigray. It had an international airport, medical school, university, superb education system, and the infrastructure was built on resources from the whole of the Ethiopian empire. And now that's been wasted. It's been thrown away by the destruction caused by Abiy Ahmed. It's like two bullies fighting over the pocket money of the other children in the playground. Do you understand the analogy?
Yeah.
And without any regard at all to the value of the other people in the playground. That's how I feel it is. I feel we are being disregarded as equal players in Ethiopia, and not only by the ruling elites, but by the international community, who see Ethiopia through the racist eyes of the urban elites. That they assume this feeling of superiority and paternalism about the people outside of the central part of the country. You can see the attitude to people. It changes when you talk about important people versus peasants. It's disgusting.
It is. It is. I appreciate your left confidence in the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. We will see where things are going. The election is coming now. With this election, there are a lot of atrocities supposed to be coming because votes have to be suppressed. And also there might be places where the election could be boycotted because the opposition groups are as they are in prison, office closures and all that. So with that might come atrocities lined up. And Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, we asked to open its sites and watch what's coming. Also, of course, you too with OSG, your work is cut out for you for this year. But generally, regarding atrocities, here at OMN, we value innocent people's life equally, irrespective of their ethnic background. We do not believe helpless women and children have a label of any ethnicity in a conflict. And there is Amhara's life or Oromo's life, they're all equal lives and they have to be protected. So we unequivocally condemn ethnic-based killings, and we believe this value is also, as you mentioned, is engraved in Oromo's social psyche. So in general, one last question, and then after that I'll ask for your comment, is we see parallel to the human rights violation reporters, we see some documentaries from different groups, like a documentaries about, it could be like about Shashamane, about Maikadra, about Gumuz, all the other places. And depending on the message that the documentary developers want, it could go to informative to show the human rights violation, or it could go to inciting further genocide. What is the the line between that you can strike between this to cool down the victimization and genocide rhetoric one side, at the same time bringing the truth to a media or international community?
Okay. First of all, I would like your listeners and viewers to read an Ethiopia Insight article that was written on the 5th or 6th of January, and that is the most unbiased piece of reporting I've seen on the Oromia region for a long time. And it's a real fillip to the morale to see that there is a chink in the armour. We're beginning to get a fair point of view exposed in the media. I think our message ought to be one of reassurance to the people who've been frightened by the anti-federalists, if you like, the urban elites, who say the Oromo are a primitive people who want to take away your land, your business, your jobs, take away your daughters, your wives, and that they're primitive beasts who eat babies, this sort of thing. We should start to reassure people that Oromo are just like anybody else. We just want equality and we want freedom. We want to be ruled by people who we want to rule us, and we want to be ruled in a system that we want. That's all. And surely the majority of people all over the world can understand that. And if we can get that simple message across, we'll have gone a long way. If we start calling for revenge attacks against any group, if we start calling names, start saying that all this group or all that group are bad, then we're delaying the eventual solution. We've got to make it very clear that we are very open. We want to talk. We want to have peace with everybody in Ethiopia, and there is nothing to fear from us.
Dr. Truman, is there anything that you think left that you wanted to say? I can give you half a minute or a minute to conclude.
No, I think I've got across all the messages I want to do. And especially that Ethiopia Insight article, it's really encouraged me to see that. And I do recommend people to read it.
Oh, by the way, where do our viewers can get this report, the Empire Strike Back report? Can you direct them to a website or any place?
Just go to oromiasupport.org.
Supportgroup.org.
Yeah, just go there.
Very well. Dr. Truman, thanks for being with us.
Speaking to you, and I hope that we can maintain this relationship.
Definitely, a lot of work ahead of us, and your work is very valuable to the Oromo. Thanks for being with us and taking our questions. I wish you very well, and I hope to see you again.
Bye, Galatoma.
Galatomi. For the OMN viewers, we say thank you for staying with us and be part of this program. And until we meet another special program again, I'm Derek Jahaz with our technician Adil. We say goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.